Hello everyone, I'm Pallavi Datt and it's so nice to be back again, and I must thank Welingkar for bringing us together once again. Today we're going to talk about how to cultivate or develop excellent interpersonal skills. And as most of us have guessed, experienced through our interactions with people, interpersonal skills is one of the essential life skills really. Whether you are interacting with an individual, one-on-one, or with multiple people or in a group, if you're required to do teamwork, be it at home, your social front, or your professional life, interpersonal skills is what will determine how far you go. It's almost like saying it's not your aptitude, but your attitude that will determine your altitude. So let's begin. Firstly, how would you define interpersonal skills? What do you think interpersonal skills are? They're nothing but a bond between individuals or a bond among the team members. And it is a prerequisite for teamwork, especially in an organization nowadays. If we were to take that perspective, if we are able to hone our skills where interpersonal skills are concerned, we would have synergy in our team, in our office spaces. Our good qualities would be recognized, we would be accepted easily. And observation says that people who have good interpersonal skills are seen as optimistic, disciplined, energetic, passionate. So it is definitely a must-have skill in our toolkit where life skills are concerned. Now, generally, when do we feel comfortable? When we interact with people? Or in other words, shall we say, what are the must-haves of good interpersonal relations? It is when we interact with people who maybe have common goals, who are maybe from the same educational background, who have maybe same interests, and maybe whom we trust, people who are transparent. All of these things make interpersonal relations easy, and it's a given. However, what the challenge is, when these things are lacking, then what do you do? When you are working with people or interacting with people who don't really have so much in common with you, that is when this skill is required far more than otherwise. Now, here is where I would like to talk about the concept of likability. It is actually not a gift. Firstly, what is likability? It's how likable a person is. The ability of a person to be liked by others is known as likability. And it's a known fact, it is a well-researched fact, that we like people like us. We like to work with people like us. Now here the challenge is, we cannot be like everyone else all the time. It's very seldom that we find people who are like us. And that is where we have to use the interpersonal skills, and that is where will be the discriminating factor or differentiating factor between whether you'd be successful in a team setup or not. Now, likability is not a gift, it's not a talent. It is actually a skill. And whenever we talk about skill, it means it is something that can be acquired, which can be learned, practiced, and mastered. How does one cultivate likability? There is a process to it. If I may just put it down to 3 steps. You begin to cultivate likability by talking to people, trying to find a common ground. There's a concept known as 6 degrees of separation actually. That if you start talking to any person, taking interest in any person, trying to find out what they are all about, you would definitely find something that is in common between that person and you, and that is known as a 6 degrees of separation. And in fact now because of the digital world, so much of connectivity, that difference has in fact reduced to 3 degrees, it is said. So as to say that all of us are actually quite closely connected to each other. It is just a matter of trying to find out. So likability, the first step is you start to talk to people, find out a common ground. Second step is, when you find a common ground, you start interacting about that common ground. Let's say you interact with a person who is also into fitness just like you. Now you start talking to that person about, okay, what is your fitness regime, how long have you been into it, what are your practices, etc. And that becomes a quotient that increases the likability. Final step to cultivating likability is you start engaging with that person in those activities, the common ground activities. And that is how one cultivates likability. Now one may say, okay, now in office space, let's say, what can we talk about? See, you have to interact with people as fellow human beings. We have to stop looking at them as only your colleagues, only your boss, manager, etc. They are fellow human beings. You talk to them. You would definitely find something common. And once you find something common, you talk about it, discover more. And then you engage in activities which are concerning the common ground. So that is how you cultivate the likability. Now, why would one do that? Why would we want to cultivate likability? Because no matter how talented you are, no matter how many degrees you have, how many qualifications you have, unless you are good with people, you're not going anywhere really. You would not have good relations in at home, social life, and your workspace. Just like Henry Ford, it is known that when he used to interview, he would ask the interviewee that, okay, you're very well qualified, I understand, but the first question that I want to ask is, can you handle people? If you can, this interview will go ahead. If you can't, then I'm sorry, I don't want to discuss it any further. Well, that's a snippet about interpersonal skills. Now, this will determine whether we are working with people or against people, how good or bad we are with interpersonal skills. There are two extremes to relations that we can have with people. One is the cooperation, and the other extreme is conflict. Through our interactions, the way we behave, the way we handle people, the way we treat people, either we are cooperating or we are in the middle of a conflict, and it is all mostly because of our interaction. We might think, no, we are not at fault, the other person did this, etc., etc. But the buck stops at you really. If you are able to control your behavior and you're able to behave in a certain manner, you would be making the other person respond differently. So you have to be able to take the ownership of that situation. Now, what is cooperation? Cooperation, if we take a working atmosphere, is a pro-organizational behavior where everybody is pro-organization. Everybody has an office citizenship, as in, like, we are citizens of India, so like we have our rights, we have our duties. So when everybody thinks that way, they take the ownership, responsibility, etc., that leads to a cooperative atmosphere. On the other hand, there is a conflict, a conflicting situation. People are behaving in a deviant organizational behavior. That means their behavior is going in a different direction from the image or expectation of an organization. So there would be backbiting, there would be bad behavior, etc., all of those things. Now, somewhere in between cooperation and conflict would lie competition. Competition can be healthy or unhealthy. Competition is good also and bad also. It's a mixed situation. So clearly, there are three types of situations that are possible. That because of the interpersonal skills, you could be in an atmosphere which is cooperative. On the other extreme, there could be a lot of conflict. But somewhere in between, there could be competition. Now, competition also can be a kind of a mixed motive situation also. It could be a healthy competition. One does not have to necessarily behave badly with anybody. Now here, I'd like to look into the concept of why anyone would cooperate and how you can make people cooperate. Why do people cooperate? Firstly, there is a principle known as the reciprocity principle. It says that when we do something, people reciprocate it. So if we want people to cooperate, it starts with us. We cooperate and people reciprocate by cooperation. Secondly, there is the concept of our individual inclination where our personality is concerned. By nature, some of us are more inclined towards cooperation. However, you might be dealing with people who are individualists. These are people who care about their individuality. They are not bothered about the bigger picture, about what are the goals of the team and the organization. They are concerned about their individual self. So it's a difficult situation to make them cooperate. Secondly, you would come across competitors. So these are people who, by their personal orientation, are very excited about competing. They believe that in a situation there can be only one winner and it's them who have to be the winners. And for them to win, the other person has to lose. Now again, very difficult to make such people cooperate. Thirdly, you could actually be dealing with people who are cooperators. That's a fantastic situation to be in. They are willing to go out of the way, maybe step back, not take so much of recognition in the bigger picture, so just so that the whole scenario works. These are cooperators. Lastly, you could actually be dealing with people who are equalizers. Now, equalizers are people who want to just equalize everything. If there is incentive, everybody should get equal incentives. If there is some out-of-country tour or conference, everybody should get equal. So it's not about the bigger picture really. It's all about, no, whatever is there, it should be equally distributed. Now, there are, like I mentioned, there are 4 kinds of individuals that you could be dealing with. Individualists, competitors, cooperators, or equalizers. So you would have to manage your interpersonal skills accordingly. Now, in many difficult situations, one can make people cooperate by bringing in the organizational reward system. That is another reason why people cooperate. So if there is a reward attached to maybe the whole team excelling, the whole team meeting a target, etc., then the people who are difficult with cooperation, they are likely to cooperate. So why do people cooperate generally? Like I told you, first is the reciprocity principle, second is their personal orientation, and thirdly there would be organizational reward system why people would cooperate. Now in middle of all of this, you have to be, of course, able to handle people correctly and use your interpersonal skills to the best. Now what can become barriers when I say you have to be able to use your interpersonal skills very well? One of the important barriers is a language barrier. Very often we overlook that we are maybe using a language which the other person is not comfortable with, or they don't even know that language very well, and we are using a language that becomes a barrier. So whatever message that we are trying to communicate, whatever emotion we are trying to communicate, that gets lost. Second barrier could be words to impress. Many times you would have come across people who use jargons or short forms and some kind of big words that the other person is not familiar with. That makes people uncomfortable. These are very small things, but they go a long way in making people comfortable or uncomfortable. So that's another barrier which you must avoid. Words to impress. Use simple language. Keep it short and simple. Thirdly, there could be a barrier concerning hidden agenda. Now what does this mean? It means whenever we interact with people, it is advisable to come to the point as quickly as possible. That does not mean you don't indulge in niceties. Talk to people about how they are, etc. But do not beat around the bush. People are not stupid. If you are just maybe talking to somebody after a long time and you're talking just because you actually need their help, it is okay to say, hello, how have you been? I'm talking to you after a long time, hope you've been well. You know what, I needed your help in such and such matter. Instead of going round and round about, okay, how are you and how are the kids and how's the dog and how's the cat, people get impatient and then your credibility goes down. So hidden agenda, if people feel you have a hidden agenda behind being nice to them, that is a barrier to interpersonal relations. After that, the unclear and ambiguous message is another barrier. So whatever you're communicating with people, make sure it is clear. It does not have two meanings that people are confused. So be careful about the clarity of your message when you're interacting. Next barrier could be wrong timing. Now this is something that we indulge in without realizing that, oh, what I said when I said was not the right time really. So the best of things said at the wrong times lose their effect. For example, if you had to compliment somebody for their cooperation with you and you didn't compliment them right then and there, you waited till sometime later and just offhandedly later on said, "Arey, you know what, you had done that for me at that time na, thank you yaar so much." Okay, you communicated your appreciation, but it would have been far more effective had you done it on time. So be careful about the timing of your interactions. Compliments or even criticism or feedback, when are you giving those? Is this the appropriate time? Will it be the most effective now? That is another consideration, and that could be a barrier. Another major barrier is negative attitude. Just think about it. When was the last time you looked forward to meeting somebody who is full of negative attitude? You were like, oh, I'm really looking forward to meeting this person who's always cribbing and always sulking. Now that's a big barrier. So if you find yourself complaining, nagging, being sulky, check that. That is a big barrier for interpersonal relations. People don't want to associate with people who are always negative in their attitude. So just flush that negative attitude. Don't be in that negative zone. Next is unfair comparison. Whenever you compare one person to another, that puts off people a lot. So be careful not to make comparisons. Treat each person as an individual with their own strong points. Next could be stereotyping. Now, what is stereotyping? Very often we have a preconceived notion about people, that if they belong to a certain group, they would definitely have these characteristics. It is also known as guilt by association. That means just because they're associated to a certain group, you think they would be guilty of something. It could be something like even people of a certain age. You would assume, oh, people of this age would have these characteristics. Maybe educational level. Oh, people of such and such educational level would have these characteristics. Maybe people who come from a certain area. That could be a stereotyping you're doing. All in all, stereotyping is a huge barrier where interpersonal relations are concerned. Nobody likes being stereotyped. You would not like being stereotyped. So get to know people for what they are and do not assume things about them just because they belong to a certain group or community or cultural background, etc. Whatever. Lastly, a barrier that can come in the way of interpersonal relations is moody day. That means you are just guided by your own mood. One day if you're feeling nice and bright, the whole world is wonderful, you're in love with the life itself, it's fantastic. But if someday things are not so good with you, you think the whole world is bad and everybody deserves to be treated badly. So please maintain a consistent behavior so that people know what to expect from you. So those were some barriers, 10 barriers that I mentioned to you that could come in the way of good interpersonal relations. By avoiding these barriers, you can cultivate trust, you can cultivate cooperation, and you can have a healthy competition instead of having an unhealthy competition or conflict. Now, when I use the word trust, now trust is a very important factor where any of our interactions is concerned. Now, before I talk more about trust, I would like you to understand what trust means. Whenever we talk about trust, we tend to think of this very huge concept of I trusted somebody and my trust was broken. Yes, that big concept is also there. However, psychologically, trust basically means your confidence that the other person will do as they have said they will do. That's all. That you are confident the other person will do as they have said they will do. That means we can talk about trust regarding maybe even a cab driver. If the cab driver has said, okay, I will take you from point A to point B, and you have confidence that they will take you there, that means there is trust. On the other hand, there could be trust between your colleagues, your good friends, with your spouse, with your parents, etc. It's just basically confidence that you will do, the other person will do as they have said they will do. Now, why do I talk about trust here? Because interpersonal relations require trust. When people see you as trustworthy, that is when your relations are good. So how do you cultivate trust? How do you become trustworthy where other people are concerned? You would find that some people are basically quite trusting by nature, so they would automatically trust a lot of people, so they would trust you also. On the other hand, you can actually develop a reputation of being trustworthy by your actions. Which are those actions? Those could be meeting the deadlines always. Always keeping your word. Whatever you have promised, you follow through on that. Or even sharing your personal goals and ambitions and etc. When you open up to people, they are able to see your intentions and motives, your goals. That's again why people start trusting you even more. So very briefly, trust basically is just the confidence that you would do as you have said you will do, and you can become trustworthy by following the 3 steps that I mentioned to you. Next, after this, I think I would like to talk about some practical tips for having good interpersonal relations. Firstly, I would talk about maybe the focus on interest instead of position. What does that mean? Whenever you're interacting with people and there is a situation where there is a little bit of conflict, just see that why people are saying what they are saying. Don't just get stuck on what people are saying. For example, if somebody says, you know what, I need this work to be done by such and such time. If you get stuck on, oh, how can they come here and say in that manner, that tone, what do they think we are, and all of those things, assumptions. Instead, what do you focus on? You focus on interest. Interest is the underlying need. Why was that thing said? When you focus on that, it becomes far more understandable and you don't get agitated. Second tip for good interpersonal relations is think win-win. Be collaborative. Try that everybody gets an optimum solution if there is any situation that you are handling. That way, you'd have good cooperation, you would have good trust levels, and of course, your interpersonal relations would be very nice. Next, make sure that you clarify and discuss instead of arguing. In an argument, both the parties are aiming to just win, and for them to win, the other party has to lose. So even when they win, they would have lost maybe a valuable ally. So instead of arguing, always discuss, always clarify, and the worst of situations can have a solution which is mutually acceptable to both the parties. Next tip is that always be considerate and be respectful towards others. Think on their behalf. What would they like? In fact, like it is said, there's a golden rule to interpersonal relations that you must treat people the way you would have them treat you. But now there's a platinum rule as well. And platinum rule says that treat people the way they would like to be treated. So it is even far more important to know how they would like to be treated. So be respectful and be considerate. Next, always, the next tip is mind your tone and mind your language. In fact, it is said that what you say is not as important as how you say. So while talking, see that your tone is pleasant, is not disrespectful. A simple tip but very powerful. Next tip for good interpersonal relations is accept responsibility and don't blame. Whenever something has gone wrong, if you find yourself using statements like you did this but you were supposed to do this, then you can rest assured that the relations are not going to be good. Okay, the other person might have faltered. All the same, make sure you use statements that start with I. You say things like, okay, I seem to have not been able to understand how you were feeling. So whenever you take responsibility, you are cultivating good interpersonal relations. Secondly, after that, don't criticize and complain. In fact, research shows that whenever we complain or criticize about a third person, the listener automatically associates the same quality to us. So you might think we're criticizing another person, but the listener, while listening, somehow thinks, oh, this person too must be having the same bad qualities. After that, one very important aspect is give honest, sincere appreciation for the smallest of things to the biggest of things. Always appreciate people around you. Next, be open to feedback. When people give you a feedback, don't just reject it that they're trying to find fault with you. Your criticizer, if you may say, might actually have a valuable point. It is all about how you handle it. Always have a genuine smile on your face and be enthusiastic, energetic, excited about situations, and people will respond to you accordingly. One very important skill or tip is be a good listener. When people talk, they're telling problems, maybe concerning you, unless you listen, unless the other person feels validated and listened to, then there is a no-go situation. Lastly, but not the least, to be a friend, to have a friend, you must first be a friend. So whenever you think, oh, people don't like me, people are not friendly with me, it has to begin with you being friendly, you developing your likability quotient. Well, we can go on and on about the interpersonal relations really, but I think I'll wind up for now, and some questions are coming in. I'll just look at those questions now. Alright, this says, how do we build interpersonal relations with people whom we genuinely don't like? The key word over here is we. That means you don't like. So there is a problem that you can handle and you can change and you should change. Again, like I began my session by saying that you cultivate likability. So talk to them, get to know them as individuals, put your emotions aside. There must be something that you can have in common. You can engage in those activities. Those would be pleasant. Next question by Ruma Malia is, how do we find a way out between cooperation and being individualistic at the same time? Okay, so what I understand is that if I want to maintain my individuality but still be cooperative, I guess that's what you mean. Firstly, being an individualist at certain times, maybe if there is a threat to your situation, then it's not wrong at all. However, if there's a bigger picture, you see, when the whole team succeeds, of course, you would get your due credit. When I spoke about being cooperative or individualistic personal orientations, so that's okay. You have to see what is your nature. If you are cooperative by nature and it's working for you, great. If you're individualistic by nature and you find that, okay, it's not working as much, then you need to move towards cooperation. There has to be a healthy balance. You have to be assertive. Being extremely cooperative could also mean completely accommodating. That is also not good. One has to be assertive of their needs. That is fine. So there has to be a middle path. There is next question by Vedant Shrivastava. How to approach cooperation opportunities and conflict scenarios? Where cooperation opportunities are concerned, it all starts with dialogue. Even the conflict scenarios, it all starts with seeing the other person as a fellow human being, like I said. You have to be able to ask, what is your objection? First step, listen. You have to neutralize the objection. If I talk about a conflict situation, when somebody is complaining to you and telling you this is the problem, what do? You neutralize the objection. You say, you accept it. You say, okay, I can see why you feel the way you do. I can truly understand. Is that the only thing that's bothering you? Okay. So, first of all, you have to let your guard down. That's how you will handle a conflict situation. Where cooperation opportunities are concerned, well, if you see an opportunity, you offer your services, you offer your skill sets and say, okay, I think I can be valuable here. Right? Next question, Neha Zahir. How to sound more confident if you have a soft voice? Neha, for this, of course, you'll have to do some practice. Stand in front of a mirror and start talking. See that your voice is low pitched, that you speak more from here instead of higher up here. So with some practice, you would be able to come up with a voice which is more prominent. Okay, I think that's it for now. We don't have time for any more questions here. Thank you so much for being with us, and if you like this session, please do leave in your comments, and if you have any suggestions for any more topics that you would like, please do write in the comments. Thank you so much.
Well, Pallavi, thank you so much for such an insightful session. Well, friends, do tune in to this space as we bring you exclusive speakers and eminent personalities to talk about various topics from the industry which help you to grow professionally. Well, if you or any of your friends are also interested in taking admissions, I think our admission helpline number is 4051-4051. Do log into this space and have a great learning experience. Thank you.